AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she asked me to lie about something I witnessed. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Emma, 29F. We grew up in a household where everything felt competitive, and our parents often pitted us against each other, sometimes even subtly favoring one of us depending on the situation. Despite that, we remained close in some ways, though our closeness fluctuated depending on stress, family events, or disagreements. Lately, things have escalated in a way that has left me questioning whether I even want to be part of her wedding at all. Emma is marrying her fiancé, David, 34M, in a few months. They have been together for around 4 years, and by most accounts, they seem happy. However, over the past year, I noticed David doing things that rubbed me the wrong way. Small things at first. He would make jokes about people in ways that seemed mean-spirited, or he would pressure Emma into decisions that clearly favored him rather than her. I tried to voice my concerns delicately, but Emma usually dismissed them, saying I was overthinking or too judgmental. I didn't want to cause tension, so I started keeping my observations to myself. A few weeks ago, we had a family gathering at my parents' house, and something happened that changed everything. I witnessed David being openly rude and manipulative toward Emma in front of everyone. He criticized her outfit, made condescending remarks about her work, and even dismissed her ideas during a group conversation. At first, I thought I had misread the situation, but then he went even further. When Emma tried to defend herself, David laughed it off and told her she was too sensitive. It was so blatant that even other family members noticed, but nobody said anything at the moment. I felt this surge of protectiveness and anger, but I also felt trapped because I was a guest, not the host. The next day, Emma called me. She was extremely upset because apparently David had spun the events differently, telling her I'd said certain things about her that I had never said. Essentially, he tried to gaslight her into thinking I had been criticizing her behind her back. When I confronted him privately, he denied any misrepresentation, but the way he spoke and avoided eye contact told me otherwise. I told Emma the truth, that I hadn't said anything negative about her, but she seemed conflicted. She thanked me, but sounded hesitant, as if she wanted to believe David's version. Things took a turn for the worse when Emma asked me to do something that completely crossed my boundaries. She called me last week, and after some small talk, she got to the point. She wanted me to cover for David at the wedding if anyone brought up his behavior. Essentially, she wanted me to lie and say I hadn't seen anything inappropriate, that he was always kind and considerate, even though I had witnessed the opposite. She framed it as keeping the peace and not ruining the wedding. She told me it would mean a lot to her if I just went along with it. I was floored. I told her I couldn't lie about something so important that would make me complicit in deceiving everyone else, and that I had an obligation to at least be truthful privately if someone asked. I tried to explain that my refusal wasn't about spoiling her wedding, but about not compromising my own integrity. Emma got defensive. She accused me of trying to ruin her special day, of being dramatic, and of not trusting her judgment. She said that if I didn't agree to her request, I didn't really love her as a sister. She also hinted that she might uninvite me from the wedding entirely. Since then, things have been tense. Our parents have tried to mediate, saying I should just let it go for one day and think about family harmony, but I can't shake the feeling that lying would be morally wrong. I feel like I am being asked to choose between my sister's happiness and my own principles, and it's tearing me apart. I also feel guilty because I know weddings are stressful, and maybe she feels like I'm attacking her. But at the same time, I see this as a critical boundary. If I compromise on this, I fear will set a precedent for future situations where I am pressured to ignore inappropriate behavior for the sake of appearances. A few friends have weighed in, and opinions are divided. Some say I'm being rigid, and that it's a small thing compared to the significance of her wedding. Others agree that being asked to lie about such a serious matter is unacceptable. I even tried suggesting alternatives, like attending the wedding, but not involving myself in any conversations about David or stepping back from official roles in the ceremony. Emma rejected these suggestions outright, saying it wouldn't be the same, and insisted that either I support her fully or stay away. The dilemma has left me feeling isolated. I want to support my sister, but not at the expense of my ethics. I've considered sending a letter expressing my love, but declining the invitation, but even that seems harsh. I don't want to be seen as the villain in my family's story, but I also can't bring myself to lie. I'm stuck between wanting to maintain family relationships and wanting to stay true to my values. So, AITA for refusing to lie about David's behavior at my sister's wedding, even if it means not attending. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's destination wedding after she criticized my career choices. So, this is going to be long because there's a lot of backstory, but I'll try to be as concise as possible without leaving out crucial details. I, 32F, have a sister, Emma, 35F, who is getting married next year. Emma has always been a bit competitive with me, and honestly, that's fine. I can usually shrug it off, but recently things escalated in a way I can't ignore. A little background. I work in a creative field, specifically as a freelance graphic designer. I work from home and have built a decent clientele over the past 8 years. My income is solid, I enjoy the work, and it gives me a flexibility I wouldn't trade for a traditional 9 to 5. Emma, on the other hand, works in finance, has a very structured life, and has always implied that my career is less than hers. I've never minded that too much because our values are different, but I think the problem is that she takes it personally that I'm not chasing the same markers of success she is. When she got engaged, she immediately started planning a destination wedding in Santorini. The guest list is small, just family and close friends, but the price tag is significant. Emma and her fiancé expect everyone to pay for their own travel, accommodations, and the associated events. The estimated cost per person is about $3,500, not including flights for international guests. She was upfront about the cost, and I started saving immediately because I wanted to support her and celebrate this milestone in her life. Things started to become stressful when she sent out a group message to her close friends and family, including me, with the itinerary, dress codes, and hotel suggestions. In that message, she also wrote something that caught me off guard. She said, "We know some of you don't have traditional careers or make as much money as others, so we try to pick accommodations that are affordable for you." The quotation marks around affordable felt incredibly condescending, like she was implying that my freelance career isn't legitimate or that I can't afford decent lodging. I didn't respond at first because I assumed she was just being thoughtless. But the next week, she called me and said she was worried that I wouldn't be able to handle the logistics of the trip and that she didn't want me to stress. She went on to say, "I know your career doesn't give you a steady paycheck like mine, so I understand if this is too much." I tried to laugh it off, but it felt belittling. I reminded her that I've traveled extensively for work and personal reasons, and that I'm more than capable of handling my own travel arrangements. That conversation didn't go anywhere. Over the next few months, every discussion about the wedding seemed to devolve into some subtle criticism of my choices. She made comments about how I probably can't take 2 weeks off easily, even though I reminded her that my schedule is flexible, and she hinted that she was worried I might not fit in with the other guests because of my job. I started to feel like she wasn't inviting me because she wanted me there, but because she wanted to showcase that even someone like me could be part of her perfect event. About 6 months before the wedding, I finally confronted her. I told her that while I love her and want to celebrate with her, I felt hurt by the way she talked about my career and my ability to participate. I explained that her comments made me feel like she doesn't respect the work I do or the life I've built. Emma got defensive and said I was overreacting, that she was just being honest, and that I was reading too much into it. She accused me of making everything about me and said that if I had a problem with her comments, it was on me to adjust my feelings, not on her to change how she speaks. I tried to move past it because I really did want to be there for her. I continued saving for the trip, But then things got worse. She sent a list of recommended hotels and highlighted one budget-friendly option. When I told her I had booked a nicer one, she responded with a message saying, "Wow, you're really going all out. I guess you don't have money worries like you said before. Good for you." That was the final straw for me. It wasn't just passive-aggressive anymore. It felt like deliberate shaming. I called her and told her that I couldn't attend the wedding. I explained that while I loved her, I couldn't be part of an event where I was being subtly mocked and not respected for who I am. I also told her that spending thousands on a trip where I felt unwelcome would be emotionally and financially draining. She blew up. She accused me of being selfish, unsupportive, and of ruining her wedding. She said our family would be disappointed and that I was choosing my feelings over our relationship. Our parents are now involved. They say that while Emma might have been a little thoughtless, I'm overreacting by refusing to attend. They argue that this is a once-in-a-lifetime event and that I'm making it about myself. My friends are split. Some say I'm right to stand up for myself, while others say I should suck it up for 1 week to make my sister happy. I feel guilty because I know Emma is excited and has been planning this for years. But at the same time, I feel like attending would validate the way she's treated me. I've offered to celebrate with her in other ways, like hosting a party when she returns or doing something special just for her, but she says nothing can replace her wedding. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's destination wedding after she repeatedly criticized my career choices and made me feel unwelcome. I should clarify a few things in case anyone thinks I'm exaggerating. I have a stable income and could technically afford the trip, but the issue is the emotional cost and the ongoing belittlement. I haven't said anything publicly about her comments. This is all private between us and our families. I still love my sister and want a relationship with her, but I don't see how I can do that while attending an event where I feel judged. I'm aware that family dynamics are complicated and I don't want to burn bridges, but I also feel like I need to set boundaries. I'm torn between doing what I think is healthy for me and doing what my sister wants, which seems impossible under the current circumstances. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house, even though he's family. I, 29F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city, which I worked really hard to secure. It's not huge, but it's mine and I like it that way. My younger sister, Emma, 26F, has been dating her fiancé, Jake, 30M, for about 2 years. Emma and I have a close relationship, but she has a habit of assuming that my space and resources are open for her and her friends and now, her fiancé. Last month, Emma called me up with a problem. She and Jake were supposed to move into their first apartment together, but Jake's work got relocated to another city temporarily, and he needed a place to stay. Emma suggested that Jake could stay with me for a month or so until his work assignment ended. I was surprised because this was the first time Jake had actually stayed in my apartment, and I wasn't thrilled at the idea. I told Emma that my apartment is really small, and I'm not comfortable having him live here for a whole month. I offered that I could help him find a short-term sublet, or even a hotel discount nearby, but I could not host him. Emma got upset and told me that I was being selfish. She said, "He's basically family now. It's not like you're letting a stranger in. It's just your future brother-in-law." I explained that just because someone is family by engagement, it doesn't mean I'm obligated to house them. She accused me of picking my apartment over family and said Jake wouldn't have anywhere else to go. I still held my ground and told her that I was not comfortable with it. A week later, Emma's tone shifted. She started dropping passive-aggressive hints whenever we talked. She would say things like, "I guess some people care more about their couch than helping family," or, "I hope your apartment feels empty without anyone who matters." I tried to brush it off, but it started to weigh on me. Then came the tipping point. Jake called me directly, saying he really appreciated that I was so welcoming and that maybe he could just stay for a couple of nights to get settled. I politely told him that, no, I could not host him at all. He then asked if it would be okay if he stored some of his stuff in my apartment for a few days. I said no again. He then mentioned he had a friend in town who could put him up, but Emma intervened again and texted me, implying that I was making things unnecessarily complicated and that I should just let him stay for a few nights. It's not a big deal. I finally snapped and told Emma that I was serious. My apartment is my personal space, and it's not a hotel or storage unit. I said that if she couldn't respect that, I couldn't help her or Jake. She then got very angry and started messaging me repeatedly, accusing me of being selfish, cruel, and choosing your precious comfort over your own family. She said she was disappointed in me and that I was setting a bad precedent for the family. I didn't respond after that, and we haven't spoken much. A few days later, my mom called me. She said that Emma told her I was being unreasonable and unkind. My mom seemed conflicted but leaned toward Emma, saying that it's only temporary and Jake is family now. I explained my side again, emphasizing that I have a right to my own home and that hosting someone I don't know very well for an extended period is not something I am obligated to do. My mom said I should try harder to compromise, but I honestly don't see what compromise is possible. Here's some context that might be relevant. My apartment is literally a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom. If Jake stayed here, it would mean either I give up my bedroom or he sleeps on the couch in the living room. I value my privacy a lot, and I don't want to be in a situation where I feel cramped or uncomfortable in my own home. Jake and I have never had a close relationship. We've met a few times, exchanged pleasantries, but I don't feel any familial bond with him. Emma sees him as part of the family, but I just don't feel that way yet. I offered other solutions, temporary sublet listings, hotels, or staying with a friend, but Emma insisted those options were somehow less family-oriented than staying with me. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain here, but I honestly think boundaries are important. My sister is hurt. My mom is slightly upset with me, and Emma keeps giving me the silent treatment or making passive-aggressive comments when we do talk. I'm wondering if I really am being selfish. I don't want to damage my relationship with my sister, but I also feel like I have a right to say no when it comes to my personal space. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my apartment, even though he's family now. AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices and causing a huge family rift. I never thought I'd find myself in the middle of a massive family conflict over something that initially seemed like a minor issue. But here we are. I'll try to give all the context so it's clear why things spiraled so badly. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Rachel, 28F, and we've always had a bit of a tense relationship, though nothing outright hostile. She's married to Tom, 30M, and they have 2 kids, Ella, 6, and Max, 3. I don't live particularly close, but we see each other at holidays and occasionally on weekends. I have a very strong sense of structure and discipline when it comes to children, probably because of my own upbringing and my career as an elementary school teacher. Rachel, on the other hand, is far more relaxed and free-spirited. That difference has always been a point of contention between us, but I've generally kept my opinions to myself. The situation that blew up happened a few months ago when I visited Rachel and Tom's house. Ella and Max are energetic kids, but overall well-behaved. I noticed right away that their daily routines are chaotic. Mealtimes are inconsistent, screen time is nearly unlimited, and rules are applied randomly. While I found it a bit concerning, I didn't comment much at first. What set me off was what happened one afternoon. I was helping Rachel with Max, who had a minor tantrum over wanting candy before lunch. Rachel immediately handed him a chocolate bar to stop the crying. I hesitated, but tried to be diplomatic, suggesting maybe we could try a fruit or a small snack instead and save the chocolate for after lunch. She laughed it off and said, "He just needs to calm down. A little chocolate won't hurt him." Later that day, I noticed that Ella was climbing on a counter and getting into things she wasn't supposed to. Rachel told her not to, but when Ella protested, Rachel just shrugged and said, "Let her explore. She's learning." By this point, I was feeling uncomfortable but tried to stay polite. I love my niece and nephew, but the parenting choices I was witnessing felt chaotic to the point of being unsafe. The real confrontation happened the next morning. Rachel was letting Max run around the kitchen with a small toy that could have been a choking hazard. I said something like, "Be careful. That could be dangerous for him." Rachel responded sarcastically, "Thanks for the lecture, Miss Perfect Teacher. I'll try to survive parenting without you." I admit I lost my cool. I told her that I was genuinely worried about the lack of boundaries, structure, and attention to safety. I gave specific examples. unlimited screen time, sweets for emotional regulation, and inconsistent rules. I emphasized that I was coming from concern, not judgment. Rachel didn't take it well. She accused me of being controlling and condescending and said I was turning a casual visit into a parenting intervention. She insisted that her kids were fine and that I had no right to dictate how she raises them. Tom tried to calm things down, but he sided with Rachel for the most part, saying that my approach was too rigid. I left that morning feeling frustrated, but convinced that I had expressed my concerns respectfully. I assumed that over time, Rachel would see the validity of what I said, especially since she's mentioned struggling with discipline before. What I didn't anticipate was the fallout. Rachel hasn't spoken to me since that visit. My parents, who I thought would understand my perspective, ended up taking her side, saying I embarrassed her and that family visits aren't for criticism. My social media posts, where I vaguely vented about chaotic parenting I witnessed, were noticed by other relatives. This caused more gossip, and several cousins reached out to ask if I had officially started a campaign against Rachel. I honestly feel conflicted. On one hand, I think I was looking out for my niece and nephew and trying to provide guidance from experience. I never intended to shame Rachel or make her feel attacked. I truly try to frame everything as concern and offered suggestions, not orders. On the other hand, I can see that I might have come off as lecturing, especially since I have a strong personality and a very structured way of thinking. I also realize that Rachel might perceive any criticism as personal because we've always had a subtle rivalry. Since then, my relationship with Rachel is non-existent, and family gatherings are tense. Tom and Rachel have even started making comments when I suggest activities for the kids in my own house, like, we do it differently, you know? My parents have stopped inviting me to certain family events, saying they don't want more drama. I don't feel like I overstepped in terms of safety concerns, but I understand that parenting is personal and that my sister might see my actions as invasive. I'm torn because I want to maintain a relationship with my nieces and nephews, but I also don't want to stay silent if I genuinely believe there are issues that could affect their well-being. So, AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices and causing a huge family rift? I genuinely tried to be helpful and concerned, but the fallout has been much worse than I expected. I'm open to perspectives on whether I crossed a line or if my intentions justify the approach I took. I also want to understand if there's a way to repair these relationships without compromising my values or staying silent about things that worry me. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée stay at my house during her emergency visit even though it caused a huge family rift. I, 34F, have always been the responsible sibling in my family. I live in a small city in a decent apartment, have a stable job, and generally try to keep my life organized. My brother, Mark, 32M, is the opposite, very free-spirited, impulsive, and tends to make last-minute decisions without thinking through the consequences. Lately, he's been engaged to a woman named Emily, 29F, who I didn't know very well before all of this drama. A couple of weeks ago, Mark called me out of the blue. He sounded panicked, which is unusual for him. He explained that Emily had a minor accident at her parents' place in a different state. They live about 7 hours away and needed a place to stay while her ankle healed because she couldn't drive. He claimed her parents were unreachable for some reason and begged me to let her stay at my apartment for a few days. I was hesitant, but didn't want to be seen as cruel, so I asked him for more details. Mark said Emily couldn't walk without crutches and needed someone to cook for her, pick up groceries, and generally keep her company. He implied it would be just a short stay, maybe 3 or 4 days. On the phone, he sounded desperate and even guilt-tripped me a little, reminding me of all the times he'd been there for me when I had emergencies. I told him I'd have to think about it because my apartment is tiny, I work long hours, and I had a lot of deadlines coming up. My apartment is a 1-bedroom with a small living room, so accommodating someone full-time would definitely be challenging. I also mentioned that I live alone and value my privacy, especially since I've been working from home lately. Mark insisted it wouldn't be a problem, that Emily would basically just hang out in the living room and that I could continue working normally. After I spent the evening thinking about it, I realized I just couldn't do it. I work from home most days, and my office setup takes up half of my living room. Also, my bathroom and kitchen are small, and having someone who couldn't walk while using them multiple times a day would be stressful. I also considered that Emily and I barely know each other, so taking care of her felt like a huge imposition. I told Mark no, politely explaining all of this. Mark immediately got defensive. He accused me of being selfish, saying that I should help family in need. He tried to guilt me by saying Emily could be in serious pain and that her parents were too busy to help. I repeated my reasons calmly, but he kept pushing. Eventually, he yelled at me and hung up. A day later, Emily showed up at my apartment anyway. She didn't call me first. She just knocked, looking flustered and with crutches. She said Mark had told her I would understand, and that she really had no other options. I was shocked. I told her I wasn't prepared for a guest and that I couldn't accommodate her. She looked upset, but said she would wait outside until I changed my mind. I told her firmly that I couldn't do it, that she needed to go back to her parents or find a hotel. She argued, asking if she could at least stay one night, and I said no. After a few minutes, she finally left, but not before sending me a long text about how heartless I was and how Mark was very disappointed. That evening, Mark called me again, yelling and accusing me of being cruel and unsupportive. He said that I had broken Emily's trust and that our family would never forgive me for treating her like this. He even threatened to cut me out of family events if I didn't reconsider. I didn't give in. I explained that my apartment is physically impossible for her to stay in comfortably and that I had work obligations. I also suggested she look for a nearby hotel or Airbnb, which she could easily afford. Mark's response was to post a long rant on social media about me being selfish and unwilling to help family, tagging several relatives. Now my family is split. Some relatives side with Mark and Emily, saying I should have just sacrificed a few days to help someone in need. Others support me, saying it's unreasonable to expect someone to host a guest who is physically limited in a small apartment, especially without prior planning. I feel hurt because I try to be polite and reasonable, but I also feel like my boundaries have been completely ignored. It's been 2 weeks, and the situation has escalated to the point where Mark is barely speaking to me. Emily avoids me entirely, and family gatherings have become tense. I've been accused of being selfish repeatedly, and even some of my friends have weighed in on social media, questioning why I couldn't help someone in an emergency. I can't shake the feeling that I did the right thing by sticking to my boundaries, but I also feel like maybe I overreacted by saying no so firmly. So, AITA for refusing to let Emily stay at my apartment, even though it caused a huge family conflict? I honestly think my decision was practical and reasonable, but the backlash has been intense, and I'm starting to doubt myself. AITA for refusing to cover my brother's wedding costs and straining my relationship with my family? I, 34M, have always considered myself reasonably responsible with money and family obligations. I grew up in a modest household, and my parents instilled the value of financial independence from a young age. I have an older brother, Derek, 37M, and a younger sister, Lily, 30F. Derek has always been somewhat reckless with money, often relying on our parents or others to cover things he can't afford. About a year ago, Derek got engaged to his fiancée, Hannah, 32F. From the beginning, he was incredibly vocal about wanting an extravagant wedding. He described venues, catering, live bands, and even a honeymoon that sounded more like a luxury vacation than a wedding trip. It wasn't unusual for him to get carried away with spending, but this felt excessive to me. When he started planning, our parents offered to help financially, which I thought was generous. They are both retired and live on fixed incomes, but they genuinely wanted to contribute to the celebration. Derek, however, insisted that he wanted everyone to chip in to cover his wedding, including me. At first, I assumed he meant a small contribution, like helping with a few small costs, but his expectations soon became clear. Derek asked me to cover several big-ticket items, including a portion of the venue cost, the catering for over 200 guests, and a large part of the floral arrangements. When I did a rough calculation, the amount he was expecting me to pay was almost $10,000. I earn a decent salary, but $10,000 would wipe out my savings, affect my ability to pay off my mortgage, and potentially impact my family's financial stability. I tried to explain this to him calmly, emphasizing that I was happy to help in a smaller way, maybe by helping with decorations, logistics, or contributing a modest monetary gift. Derek reacted angrily. He accused me of being selfish, implying that I didn't care about him or our family. He said that if I really loved him, I would help him fund the wedding because it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. I tried to reason with him, reminding him that it's normal for families to help, but it shouldn't be at the expense of someone else's financial security. I also mentioned that our parents were already contributing significantly, and I thought that should be enough. Derek refused to acknowledge this and kept pressuring me. The situation escalated further when my parents subtly suggested I might reconsider, hinting that family harmony was at stake. I felt trapped. I don't want to cause conflict, but I also felt I couldn't justify jeopardizing my financial stability. Eventually, I firmly told Derek I could not pay the $10,000 and that any smaller contribution I could make would be in the form of helping with planning or a reasonable cash gift for the wedding itself. Derek exploded, calling me cruel and saying I had no family loyalty. He even implied that I shouldn't attend the wedding if I wasn't willing to help financially. Our parents tried to mediate, but tensions only increased. My sister, Lily, sided with Derek, saying I was overreacting and being stingy. This created a serious rift in the family. The last time I spoke to Derek, he told me he didn't want me involved in any aspect of the wedding if I wasn't going to pay my share, which I interpreted as him wanting to exclude me from the event entirely. I have since stopped discussing wedding matters with him or anyone else in my family to avoid further arguments. I feel guilty for refusing, but I also feel frustrated that Derek refuses to take responsibility for his own financial planning. I have done my best to be reasonable, offering help in ways that don't harm my finances, but it seems like nothing I offer is acceptable. I worry that my refusal might permanently damage my relationship with my brother and possibly my family. I know weddings are important milestones, but I also know that money stress and resentment can ruin relationships in the long run. I feel like I am being unfairly painted as the villain for setting boundaries that I believe are necessary. AITA for refusing to fund a large portion of my brother's wedding and risking my relationship with my family. I should add that I have a wife and 2 kids, and our budget is already tight. Supporting a $10,000 wedding expense for my brother would put us in real financial jeopardy. I've explained this to Derek multiple times, but he refuses to accept it. I've also considered contributing something smaller than he wants, but even offering $500 led to accusations that I was mocking him and that I didn't care about family traditions. Friends I've spoken to have mixed opinions. Some say that families should support each other and that weddings are worth making sacrifices for. Others say that expecting someone to give $10,000 on short notice when they have other obligations is unreasonable. I tend to agree with the latter, but the family pressure is intense. I haven't received any threats beyond angry messages, but the emotional toll has been heavy. I'm anxious about seeing Derek at family events, and I'm worried about the upcoming holiday gatherings where this tension will be unavoidable. I want to maintain relationships, but I also want to set boundaries. I fear that refusing to fund his wedding might create a permanent divide. I'm trying to navigate this in a way that preserves my principles while minimizing damage to my relationships, but I'm not sure if I'm succeeding. I've asked Derek to consider cutting costs or adjusting the scale of the wedding to make it more manageable for everyone involved, but he dismisses these suggestions. He insists that if he can't have the wedding he envisions, then I should at least pay for it. Ultimately, my concern is that if I cave in and pay the $10,000, it will set a precedent for future financial demands. I've seen him rely on others before, and it rarely ends well. I feel like I am protecting my family's financial stability and teaching him a valuable lesson about personal responsibility. But at the same time, I worry I'm sacrificing my relationship with him and possibly my parents' respect. I want to emphasize that I am not unwilling to help in general. I've already offered time, effort, and smaller financial contributions, but nothing seems sufficient. I also recognize that weddings can be emotional and that Derek's feelings are valid, but so are my boundaries. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to fund my brother's wedding. Even though it has caused tension with my family and may permanently affect our relationship. AITA for cutting ties with my sister over her wedding drama. I, 28F, have always been close to my older sister, Lisa, 32F. We grew up inseparable and shared almost everything, from clothes to secrets. Our parents were always supportive, but somewhat traditional, and our family has always been known for overcomplicating even the simplest occasions. I have always been more easygoing, and Lisa has always had a flair for drama. A few years ago, Lisa got engaged to Mark, 34M. I was genuinely happy for her. Mark is a nice guy, and I thought they balanced each other well. The problem started when she began planning the wedding. Lisa wanted a large, extravagant wedding. She wanted every detail perfect, every guest perfectly seated, every flower perfectly aligned, every meal perfectly cooked. I was her maid of honor, and at first, I tried to help. I really did. However, over time, I noticed that Lisa's idea of help was very controlling. She would ask me to pick out dresses for the bridesmaids, but then reject every option I chose, not even explaining why. She would ask me to coordinate with the vendors, but then call them herself and criticize my approach. I tried to let it slide, thinking it was wedding stress. I told myself, this is just how she is right now, and I'll support her no matter what. The turning point came 2 months before the wedding. Lisa invited me to a meeting at her house with a wedding planner and some family members. The planner asked me for suggestions on seating arrangements, and I suggested placing people who didn't get along at separate tables to avoid drama. Lisa scoffed at me and loudly said, "No, that's boring. I want everyone to sit where I want, and if they don't like it, that's their problem." I tried to explain my reasoning calmly, but she cut me off repeatedly. Then she turned to my parents and said, "See, she doesn't even understand what I'm trying to do. She's just trying to make things complicated." After that meeting, I started noticing little digs everywhere. She would mock my outfit choices, make sarcastic comments about my taste in food, and constantly complain that I wasn't helping enough, even though I spent hours coordinating things, buying decorations, and attending fittings. I felt unappreciated and disrespected, but I told myself that it was her wedding and she had the right to be stressed. A week before the wedding, things escalated. Lisa asked me to help with a DIY project for the reception decorations. It was supposed to be simple, making small floral arrangements for each table. I spent an entire afternoon creating them, carefully following the instructions she gave me. When I showed her the finished pieces, she looked at them, sighed loudly, and said, "These are horrible. They look cheap. I can't believe you messed this up. I'm going to have to redo all of them." I felt crushed. I asked her politely what she thought was wrong, thinking I could fix it, but she said, "There's nothing to fix. You just ruined them." I tried talking to her privately about how hurt I was. I said I felt unappreciated and that I had been putting in a lot of effort. She laughed and said, "You think this is about appreciation? It's about perfection. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be involved." I told her I was disappointed because I had always supported her and wanted to help, and she snapped, "Well, maybe you should have thought about that before deciding to be the maid of honor." I thought things might calm down on the wedding day itself, but they didn't. On the morning of the wedding, I arrived early to help set up. Lisa immediately started yelling at me in front of the other bridesmaids because a few chairs were slightly crooked. She kept pointing at me and saying, "I can't believe this. I trusted you, and you let me down." I tried to stay calm, but when she started blaming me for the color of the tablecloths not matching the invitations exactly, I lost it. I said, "Lisa, I've been trying my best for months. This is ridiculous." She yelled back, "Your best isn't good enough. Nothing you do is ever good enough." That was the breaking point. I left the venue before the ceremony. I didn't attend the wedding at all. I didn't send her a message. I just drove home and didn't answer calls or texts for several days. When I finally did respond, she sent me a long message accusing me of ruining her special day and showing that I don't care about her happiness. I replied calmly that I had tried to help, but her constant criticism and verbal attacks had made it impossible for me to participate. She then sent me a very angry message accusing me of being selfish and dramatic. Since then, we have barely spoken. She occasionally texts me passive-aggressive messages or tags me in social media posts showing pictures from the wedding with captions like, "So glad everyone loved my perfect day," but she never acknowledges my absence. My parents and other family members have asked me to apologize and reconcile, but I feel like if I do, it will just signal that her behavior was acceptable. I have friends who say I was right to set boundaries, but I also feel guilty for abandoning my sister on one of the most important days of her life. I don't want to be estranged, but I also don't want to be treated as someone who can be bullied or dismissed anytime she wants something. So, AITA for cutting ties with my sister over her wedding drama. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after he threatened my dog. I've always considered myself the peacekeeper in my family, but a situation came up recently that has made me question if I'm being unreasonable. I, 29F, live in a moderately sized city in a 2-bedroom apartment with my dog. A 3-year-old golden retriever named Max is more than a pet. He's basically my child. He's well-trained, social, and gentle, but he can get defensive if someone acts aggressively toward him. My younger sister, Emily, 26F, recently got engaged to her boyfriend, Jason, 27M. I've met Jason a handful of times over the past year, and honestly, I've never felt comfortable around him. He's charming on the surface, but has a tendency to be controlling, and I've noticed subtle red flags in how he interacts with Emily, such as criticizing her appearance or belittling her opinions in front of others. I never said anything directly because I didn't want to cause family tension, but I kept my distance. About 2 months ago, Emily asked if Jason could stay at my apartment for a weekend while they were in town. She said their apartment was undergoing maintenance, and it would be easier for him to crash at my place. I was hesitant, but I figured it would only be for one night, and I wanted to be supportive of my sister, so I reluctantly agreed. The first night went fine, and I didn't really interact with Jason much. The trouble started the next morning. I had just taken Max for his morning walk when I got back, and Jason was sitting on my couch. I greeted him politely, and Max ran up to him, wagging his tail. Jason froze and immediately recoiled, glaring at Max as friendly, so I thought it was odd that Jason reacted so negatively. Then Jason stood up and loudly said, "Get that dog away from me." I hate dogs. I told him Max is harmless and just wants to say hi, but he continued backing away. The real incident happened when I went to make breakfast. Jason followed me into the kitchen, and Max, curious as always, padded behind me. Jason stepped toward Max and raised his hand in what I interpreted as a threatening gesture. I yelled at him to stop, and Max barked sharply, which startled Jason. He shouted, "If that dog bites me, I'll sue you," and stormed out of the kitchen. I tried to calm Max down, who was confused and now anxious, but Jason refused to apologize and spent the rest of the day sulking in the living room. Later that evening, Emily called me to check in. I told her what had happened, emphasizing that Max was not aggressive and that Jason's reaction was over the top. Emily laughed it off and said, "He's just not a dog person, don't worry about it." I expressed concern that someone who reacts so aggressively to a dog could potentially act the same way toward a person. Emily told me I was overreacting. Things escalated the next day. Jason wanted to take Max outside, claiming he wanted to train him. I immediately said no. Jason became hostile, arguing that I was being unreasonable. He leaned toward Max in a way that made the dog bark and growl, which in turn made Jason yell at Max and push him back. I stepped in and firmly told him that if he didn't leave Max alone, he would have to leave my apartment. Jason snapped, calling me controlling and saying I was overprotecting a dog instead of being a good sister. I told Emily she needed to pick him up immediately. Emily got defensive and said I was ruining their weekend and that Jason was just trying to have fun with Max. I reminded her that Max is my dog and that I have the right to set boundaries in my own home. Emily said she would handle it, but when I came home later, Jason was still there, refusing to leave. I told him one more time that he had to leave, and he started yelling, saying I was being petty and unreasonable. He claimed that my actions were embarrassing Emily and accused me of trying to manipulate the situation. Eventually, Emily came to my apartment and picked Jason up herself, but she was visibly upset. She called me later and said that I had ruined her relationship and that I was being unfair to Jason. She also said that my reaction made her worry about how controlling I might be in my own relationships. I explained that my only concern was the safety of Max and the fact that Jason had been aggressive toward him, but she said I was exaggerating and that he didn't mean anything by it. Since then, my family has been divided. My parents think I overreacted and that I should have been more accommodating, while my best friend and a few coworkers say I was completely justified. Emily has barely spoken to me, and I feel guilty that my relationship with her might be permanently affected. On the other hand, I genuinely feel that I cannot trust Jason around Max or in my home, and that enforcing boundaries is reasonable. I'm struggling with whether I handled the situation appropriately or if I should have found a more diplomatic way to manage it. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my apartment after he threatened my dog? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me after she needed a fresh start. This all started about a year ago. My sister, Rachel, has always been the more spontaneous one in our family, while I'm the planner. She's 28, I'm 32, and we've had our fair share of disagreements, but we've always managed to stay on reasonably good terms. Our parents live in another state, and we don't see them too often, so most of our adult life has been fairly independent. A little over a year ago, Rachel called me in a panic. She had recently quit her job as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm and was living in a small apartment she could no longer afford. According to her, she needed a fresh start, which apparently included moving to the city where I live. She asked if she could stay with me for a while she got back on her feet. I hesitated because, as much as I love my sister, I value my personal space and have a pretty rigid schedule. I also work from home and have a small dog who doesn't always do well with new people in the house. I told her I would think about it. Over the next week, she sent me multiple texts and emails explaining her situation in detail. She mentioned she had only a few $100s left, no immediate job prospects, and was struggling with mental health issues. I felt sympathetic, but also overwhelmed. I rent a small 2-bedroom apartment, and having her move in would mean giving up my office space and my routine for an undefined period. I decided to tell her that while I couldn't offer her long-term housing, I could help her find short-term solutions like sublets or affordable shared apartments. I also offered to help her update her resume and look for jobs in the city. Rachel didn't take this well. She accused me of being unsupportive and cold, claiming that family is supposed to help each other in times of need. I tried explaining that I do want to help, but having her move in would create tension and stress for both of us, especially because I need a structured environment to work and live in. She responded by sending me a long message about how our parents would be disappointed in me and how she expected better from her older sister. After that, we didn't speak for a couple of weeks. During this time, I started looking at short-term rental options in my city that were affordable, thinking maybe she could stay somewhere temporary without moving in with me. She eventually found a sublet in a neighborhood about 45 minutes away and agreed to move there. Things seemed to calm down, but then she started dropping subtle comments whenever we talk, like, I guess some people care more about their schedules and their family, or it must be nice to be selfish and live stress-free. It was frustrating because I felt like I was trying to help her in a way that respected both of our boundaries, yet she kept framing it as me being heartless. Fast forward a few months, and I got a call from our parents. They told me they had spoken to Rachel, and she was feeling very hurt and had even mentioned considering moving back to our hometown if she couldn't make it work in the city. They weren't angry at me, but they seemed to think I should make more effort to accommodate her. I explained my side to them, and they said they understood but asked if I could reconsider for a little while. I told them honestly that I couldn't, and that my previous offer of helping her find a short-term rental and assisting with job hunting was the best way I could support her. A couple of weeks later, Rachel sent me a long text that felt like a mix of guilt-tripping and veiled threats. She said, I can't believe my own sister won't let me stay. I thought family meant something to you. Maybe I should just cut ties if this is how you treat people who need help. I didn't respond immediately because I didn't want to escalate the situation. When I finally replied, I told her I was sorry she felt that way, but my decision wasn't negotiable. I reiterated that I wanted to help in ways that were sustainable for both of us, like assisting with job applications or helping her find affordable housing. She blocked me after that. Now, almost a year later, Rachel is still living in the city, but we barely talk. Our parents try to mediate when we see them, but it's awkward. A few mutual friends have asked me if I regret not letting her move in, implying that I was being selfish or unkind. I don't feel like I was being selfish. I was honest about my limitations and tried to help in ways that were realistic. But at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that maybe I should have been more accommodating. I've thought about this a lot, and I know some people believe that family should be willing to make sacrifices for each other. But I also think that setting boundaries is important and that helping shouldn't come at the cost of your own mental health or living situation. I've seen friends in similar situations end up resenting their relatives after letting them move in, and I didn't want to risk that. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me, even though she was struggling and needed a fresh start. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after he insulted my cooking. So this all started last month. I, 28F, live in a medium-sized city and have a pretty stable job in marketing. I've always been the one my family turns to for hosting events. I love having people over, cooking, and making sure everyone feels comfortable. My sister, Emily, 30F, is getting married in a few months, and she's been visiting a lot because her fiancé, Mark, 32M, wants to meet family and get to know everyone better. I should mention that I've met Mark a few times before, and while I didn't dislike him, I found him a bit abrasive and self-important. My sister, of course, adores him. About 3 weeks ago, Emily and Mark came to visit for the weekend. I had planned a full weekend of activities, and I cooked a special dinner on Friday night. I had spent hours preparing everything: homemade pasta, complex sauce, salad, and dessert. I wanted it to be perfect because I like to make a good impression. When it was time to eat, I brought the food to the table, and everyone started serving themselves. That's when Mark made a comment that completely threw me off. He looked at my pasta and said, "Honestly, I don't think pasta should ever be homemade. It's weirdly gummy and too soft. I don't get why anyone bothers." I was shocked and a bit embarrassed, but I laughed it off nervously and said something like, "Well, it's homemade, so it might not be perfect, but I hope you enjoy it anyway." My sister didn't react, but I could see her uncomfortable. Mark then proceeded to make a few more comments about other dishes, including the sauce, saying it was overly complicated and that a jar of good sauce would have been better. I was quietly fuming, but I didn't want to ruin the evening, so I just smiled and continued serving everyone else. The next morning, I tried to act normal and prepare breakfast, hoping to move past the incident. But Mark's attitude didn't change. He kept making little snide remarks about the food, my decor, and even the music I played in the background. At one point, he said, "I guess not everyone can have good taste," in response to a playlist I'd spent hours curating. I finally decided I had had enough and told him that if he couldn't be polite, he wasn't welcome in my home. My sister was shocked and tried to mediate, but I stood firm. I told her, "I can't have someone stay in my home who insults my cooking and mocks my choices. It's disrespectful." Emily was furious with me. She said I was overreacting and that Mark was just joking. I argued that the jokes weren't funny and that he had been doing it all weekend. She started yelling that I was being immature and that I should just host them like normal people do. Things got heated, and I told her she could visit, but Mark was not allowed to stay under my roof. She left that morning without saying much else. Since then, Emily has been calling me almost daily, trying to guilt trip me. She says I'm ruining her relationship and that I'm being petty over a few comments. Mark, through Emily, has sent messages apologizing if I felt hurt, but it wasn't intended, which I didn't respond to. My parents call me as well, saying I should have been more accommodating and that refusing them a place to stay is extreme. I explained everything, but they kind of brushed it off as me being too sensitive. I've let Emily know that she is still welcome anytime, but Mark is not. She has now started threatening not to visit at all if I don't let him stay. I honestly feel that his behavior was disrespectful, arrogant, and inconsiderate. I don't want someone in my home who belittles my efforts, especially when I was trying to be welcoming and kind. At the same time, I feel like the way I reacted might have been extreme. I'm trying to stand my ground, but the backlash from my family is making me second-guess myself. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after he insulted my cooking. Here's a bit more context if it helps. I have hosted plenty of events and family visits, and this is the first time I've felt completely disrespected. My home is usually a safe space where people feel comfortable, and I feel like letting Mark stay would compromise that. I'm fully aware this might make family gatherings tense, but I'm not willing to tolerate ongoing disrespect in my own home. Since this incident, I've also noticed that Mark tends to make small, passive-aggressive comments about other people's choices, not just mine. I think he's trying to establish dominance or show that he's superior. Emily doesn't seem to see it that way because she's enamored with him, but I think it's unhealthy. The worst part is that now my sister is giving me the silent treatment, except for the calls where she complains. I've tried to explain calmly, but she insists I'm the unreasonable one. I don't want to create a rift in our family, but I also feel like I need to set boundaries and maintain respect in my home. I also invited a few of my closest friends over that weekend, and they were all shocked by Mark's behavior. They later told me privately that they thought he was extremely rude and ungrateful. It made me feel validated, but it didn't change the fact that my sister is still angry at me. I'm now stuck wondering whether I'm being too rigid. I feel like letting him stay would only encourage more disrespectful behavior, but I also don't want to lose my sister over this. Every family gathering now feels tense, and I'm worried this will escalate as the wedding approaches. So again, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after his repeated insults and passive-aggressive remarks? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house, even though he claims he's just visiting? I, 32F, have always been extremely private about my home. I live alone in a modest 3-bedroom apartment, and I genuinely like having space for myself. I have a small circle of friends, and I work from home, so my routine is very particular. I also have a cat who is incredibly sensitive to changes in her environment, so any extra guests are stressful for her, and, honestly, for me. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, recently got engaged to a man named Josh, 30M. I met Josh a few times at family gatherings, and while he seems nice enough, I don't know him very well. From the start, I noticed that Emily's fiancé has a habit of assuming familiarity and comfort that hasn't been earned. For example, at our last family dinner, he asked if he could just crash at my place sometime because he was in town for work. I was taken aback. I explained that I don't usually host people in my apartment because I work from home and my cat doesn't do well with strangers. He seemed surprised but said he understood. Fast forward a few weeks, Emily called me in a panic. She said that Josh had been in town for work again and had asked if he could stay with me. She added that he was very persistent, and it made her feel guilty about not asking me first. I told Emily that I still wasn't comfortable hosting him. I explained that my space is private, I have work responsibilities, and my cat doesn't do well with guests. I suggested some local hotels or Airbnb options nearby. Emily seemed frustrated but didn't push further. 2 days later, Josh texted me directly. He wrote something along the lines of, "Hey, I'm in town, and Emily said I could stay with you for a few nights. Hope that's okay." I was shocked. I replied that Emily might have miscommunicated and that I wasn't able to host him. He responded with a long message explaining that he didn't want to spend money on a hotel and that he thought staying with family was normal. He said it would only be a couple of nights and that he would be very low maintenance. I reiterated that I couldn't host him and that he should find a hotel. That evening, I got a long call from Emily. She sounded upset and accused me of being unreasonably rigid and mean to Josh. She said that Josh had been traveling a lot for work and just wanted a comfortable place to stay for a couple of nights. Emily also said that he was part of the family now and that refusing him made me seem like I didn't care about her happiness. I explained all over again that my home isn't a hotel, that I work from home, and that my cat gets very stressed with strangers. I also pointed out that I barely know Josh and that it feels premature to invite him into my private space. She told me that I was being selfish and that our relationship was suffering because of my stubbornness. After the call, I decided to reach out to my parents for advice. They were sympathetic but a little hesitant. They said that while it's nice to be welcoming, they understood that my home is my private space. They suggested trying to compromise if possible, but I felt there wasn't really a compromise here. I simply don't want to host someone I don't know well, especially when they are ignoring my boundaries. The next day, I received a series of texts from Josh that really annoyed me. He kept saying things like, "I promise I'll barely be there. You don't have to worry about me." And, "It'll be just for a couple of nights. I don't see why this is a big deal." At this point, I finally told him that continuing to push me would be inappropriate, and I asked him not to contact me about staying in my apartment again. He responded with a long rant about me being cold and unwelcoming, and then he blocked me on social media. Emily hasn't spoken to me since that call. I sent her a few texts to explain my side calmly, but she either ignores them or responds with short, passive-aggressive messages. Our parents have suggested trying to mediate, but Emily insists that I'm being unreasonable and that I need to learn to be part of the family. My friends all say I did the right thing. They point out that I set clear boundaries, communicated them politely, and offered alternatives. They also say that no one has the right to guilt-trip someone into hosting them, especially when they've already been told no. I feel conflicted because I love my sister and want her to be happy, but I also feel like my privacy and comfort are being disrespected. Part of me wonders if I am being inflexible or harsh. I don't want to completely alienate my sister, but I also don't think it's fair for me to be forced into hosting someone just because they are now engaged to my sibling. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house, even though he claims he's just visiting? AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé plan my wedding? So, I, 28F, have been with my partner, Mark, 30M, for about 4 years, and we finally got engaged last year. Planning a wedding has been mostly smooth, except for one major issue that has completely derailed the process. My brother, James, 32M, and his fiancée, Laura, 29F. I'll try to explain everything as clearly as I can. James and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, he was competitive with me in every possible way: grades, sports, even social situations. As adults, we get along okay, but he still has a tendency to insert himself into things that aren't his business. Laura is sweet, but also a little overbearing, and she has a strong personality that clashes with mine. I've always tried to keep the peace, but I'm realizing that some boundaries need to be set. When I got engaged, my first thought was excitement, followed by panic about planning. Weddings are stressful, and I knew I wanted it to feel intimate and personal. I also have a very particular aesthetic in mind: minimalist, elegant, and modern. When I started discussing ideas with Mark, I also mentioned that we wanted to hire a planner to help manage the logistics because my schedule is demanding and planning a wedding on top of everything else felt overwhelming. Here's where the problem started. As soon as James found out about our engagement, he was over the moon. But then he mentioned that Laura had so many amazing ideas and that they really wanted to be involved in planning. At first, I was polite and said we appreciated their enthusiasm, but we already had a planner in mind, and I politely told them that the planner would be handling all major decisions. I also told them that we wanted the wedding to reflect Mark and me, not anyone else. I thought that would be the end of it. It was not the end of it. A couple of weeks later, Laura showed up at my apartment with a folder of Pinterest boards, swatches of fabric, and sample menus. She went through them with me, explaining in detail why she thought every element of my wedding should be changed to match her ideas. She wanted a rustic, boho-chic theme, completely opposite of my minimalist vision. I tried to politely push back, saying, "Thanks, Laura, but we really want something clean and simple." She replied that it doesn't matter what you want. Weddings are about making family happy too, and that we're just trying to help you avoid mistakes. I was shocked. I've never met anyone who could be so dismissive of someone else's wedding vision. I tried to redirect the conversation multiple times, telling her we appreciated the input, but we were sticking with our own plans. She became visibly upset and left, but then started sending me emails and messages almost daily suggesting vendors, decorations, and even specific songs for the ceremony. James would also call occasionally, asking why we hadn't taken Laura's advice seriously. The breaking point came last month. We had booked our venue and sent out save the dates. Laura insisted that we needed to change the date because she was hosting her cousin's birthday out of town and that our flowers were all wrong. I politely reminded her that the venue was booked and the date was set, but she insisted that we were being unreasonable and selfish. I finally told her that if she continued to push her ideas on us, we would have to limit communication about the wedding entirely. James was furious when I said this, accusing me of excluding family and being controlling. He said I was overreacting and that Laura was only trying to help. A week later, I sent a firm email to both of them explaining that while we love them and wanted them to celebrate with us, Mark and I were making the final decisions for our wedding. I stated that any further attempts to impose their ideas would not be entertained. James called me later, yelling that I was destroying the family dynamic and that I was acting like a dictator over something that should be joyful. Laura texted me saying that I was selfish and cruel for not considering her suggestions. They have since refused to speak to me about the wedding except through short, curt messages. Meanwhile, my friends and planner have been supportive. They say that it's completely reasonable for the bride and groom to make all decisions and that Laura's behavior is overstepping boundaries. Mark has also backed me up, saying he feels blindsided by how forceful Laura has been and that he fully supports me making the final calls. Still, I can't shake the feeling that my brother and future sister-in-law might never forgive me, and the thought of family tension on what is supposed to be the happiest day of my life is stressing me out. I feel like I've been extremely patient and polite throughout this entire process, but the constant interference has made me feel disrespected and anxious. Part of me worries that I am being too harsh and that maybe I should let them have some input to keep the peace. But another part of me feels strongly that this is my wedding and that they are crossing a line. I'm also concerned that if I give in even a little, they will continue to try and control more and more aspects of the wedding, which will be exhausting and stressful. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé plan my wedding. I've tried to set boundaries politely and repeatedly, but they're still upset. I feel like I'm being reasonable, but I also feel guilty about the family tension. I don't want to ruin my relationship with James, but I also don't want to compromise on a day that's supposed to reflect me and Mark. Has anyone else had a similar experience? And how did you handle it without completely alienating family? AITA for refusing to let my sister move back into my house, even though she says she deserves a second chance. I, 34M, have always been the responsible one in my family. I own a modest 3-bedroom house in a suburban area, and I live alone. My younger sister, Lena, 30F, has had a turbulent past few years. She has struggled with financial instability, often bouncing between roommates, couch surfing, and living with friends. She's also had a history of addiction, which she has been working to manage for the past couple of years. Despite all of this, she's charming and can be incredibly persuasive, which is relevant to the story. About 6 years ago, Lena lived with me after a particularly rough breakup. At first, things were okay. She contributed a little to rent and utilities and tried to follow house rules. However, within a few months, her behavior became increasingly problematic. She would stay up all night, invite random acquaintances over without asking, and occasionally borrow things without returning them. One night, she had a party while I was away, and it ended with a broken window and my neighbor complaining to the landlord. That was the final straw. I asked her to leave, and she did, but the fallout affected my relationship with my neighbors and even led to a temporary increase in my insurance premium. Fast forward to now. Lena reached out a few months ago, saying she wanted to turn her life around. She has a steady job, a small apartment she's renting, and she claims she's finally responsible and mature. She hinted multiple times that she wanted to move back in with me, saying she missed being part of a family and thought it would be a fresh start. I was initially sympathetic. I told her I was glad she was doing well, but I reminded her of the past and said I wasn't comfortable having her live with me again. Lena's response was unexpected. She accused me of being unforgiving and selfish, saying that I was punishing her for mistakes she made years ago. She claimed that because I had a stable life and a nice home, it was my duty to help her, especially since she's finally getting herself together. She even said that if I didn't let her move in, it meant I didn't love her and that I was letting the past define me. I tried to reason with her, explaining that while I care about her and want her to succeed, I also have boundaries. I told her that letting her live here again would put me in a very stressful position, potentially ruining my own life and stability, and that our past experience shows that it's a real risk. I offered alternatives. I could help her look for an apartment, co-sign a lease if necessary, or help financially in small, manageable ways. But she wasn't having any of it. Things escalated when our parents got involved. They told me that I was being harsh and needed to show family loyalty. My mother said that Lena deserved a second chance and that I should trust her. My father was more neutral, but hinted that refusing might cause long-term family tension. Lena started messaging me daily, guilt-tripping me, saying things like, "If you love me, you'd help me," and "I thought we were closer than this." I'm now in a position where my refusal is causing a rift with my family. My parents are subtly pressuring me during family gatherings, and Lena has stopped speaking to them because they won't force me to let her move in. Meanwhile, I feel like I'm being accused of cruelty simply for protecting my own space and peace of mind. To make things more complicated, I recently found out that Lena has been exaggerating her financial stability. Her job is secure, but she has debts and hasn't saved much. I worry that if she moves in, I would end up financially responsible for her again, and it would repeat the cycle of chaos from the past. I also learned from mutual friends that she occasionally goes out late with people who have a history of poor decision-making, which could lead to problems if she were living under my roof. I understand that family loyalty is important, but I also feel that people don't get to demand living arrangements just because they deserve a second chance. I'm willing to support Lena in ways that don't compromise my boundaries, but it seems no one in my family acknowledges that as valid. I also don't want to be the bad guy in this story, but at the same time, I cannot compromise my stability and mental health. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister move back into my house even though she says she deserves a second chance? My past experience with her makes me genuinely worried about repeating the same mistakes, and I feel like I've set a reasonable boundary, but my family thinks I'm being unnecessarily harsh. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé plan our family vacation after he tried to take over everything. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 29F. We've been inseparable since childhood, and even as adults, we spend a lot of time together. Our parents live overseas, so most family gatherings happen at my house or in shared trips we plan ourselves. Emily recently got engaged to a man named Jason, 31M. I like Jason personally. He's charming, funny, and seems genuinely devoted to Emily. However, he has this tendency to overstep boundaries, and it has caused tension between us over the last few months. Last month, Emily announced that she wanted to organize a family vacation over the summer. Normally, I would have taken the lead because I live near a bunch of potential destinations and have the resources to book everything comfortably. Emily and I brainstormed a few locations, talked about budgets, and discussed dates. Everything was going smoothly until Jason got involved. Jason suddenly insisted on taking over the planning. He argued that he had experience with organizing trips for his friends and that he could handle everything. He started choosing destinations, accommodations, and even meal plans without consulting anyone else. At first, I tried to compromise, suggesting we create a shared document to plan together, but Jason was adamant that his method was more efficient and dismissed my input. Emily, for the first time, sided with him, saying she wanted him to handle it since he seemed confident. What followed was chaos. Jason picked a destination that none of the family members had visited but required expensive flights and accommodations that would put a strain on my budget. He also scheduled activities for the whole week without asking anyone's preferences, including my elderly mother, who has mobility issues, and my teenage niece, who hates long hikes. When I voiced my concerns about accessibility and budget, Jason brushed them off, claiming he was trying to make everyone's experience better and implied I was being controlling. The final straw was when Jason started telling me I should not be involved in organizing or choosing anything because I was too emotional and would overthink. That hurt deeply because I've spent years making sure our family trips are enjoyable and stress-free. I told Emily that I was uncomfortable with Jason running everything and that I wanted to have a say, especially considering my contributions to the trip in terms of finances and logistics. Emily tried to mediate, but seemed more interested in keeping Jason happy than listening to me. I finally told Emily and Jason that if they insisted on controlling every aspect of the vacation, I would bow out entirely. I explained that it wasn't about being difficult, but about ensuring the trip would work for everyone. I suggested we either plan it together as a family or have Jason take a completely separate trip with Emily. To my surprise, Emily responded angrily, accusing me of trying to sabotage her relationship and insisting that Jason's approach was better organized than mine. Jason doubled down, making a comment along the lines of, "If you cared about your family, you'd let me handle it without complaints." I decided to step back. I told them I wouldn't participate unless planning became a collaborative effort again. My parents called me afterward, and they said they understood my concerns and agreed that Jason was overstepping. My friends also agreed that it sounded like Jason was controlling and dismissive. However, Emily hasn't spoken to me much since then, and she posted a story online about how family conflicts are inevitable and how she's grateful to have someone who knows how to manage things in her fiancé. I feel hurt and confused. My main goal was to ensure the vacation would work for everyone, including people with specific needs, and to maintain family harmony. I don't see how stepping back to avoid conflict is a betrayal of Emily or her relationship. I also feel that Jason's behavior has been dismissive, controlling, and unfair, and I am frustrated that Emily isn't seeing it. Since then, I've received mixed reactions from friends and distant relatives. Some say I was right to step back because I would have created tension by confronting Jason, while others say I overreacted and should have let Emily's fiancé plan as he saw fit. I honestly don't want to fight with Emily, but I also don't want to sacrifice my boundaries or sanity. I'm stuck between wanting to support my sister and wanting to protect my own mental health and the interests of the family as a whole. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé take complete control of our family vacation and stepping back when he ignored my concerns. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emma, 26F, who is getting married next month. Our relationship has always been complicated. Growing up, we were close, but as we got older, our personalities diverged in ways that made communication difficult. I tend to be more introverted and cautious, while Emma is outgoing, impulsive, and often speaks without considering consequences. Despite this, I've always tried to support her, attending milestones, celebrating achievements, and being there during rough patches. About a year ago, Emma met her now fiancé, Mark, 30M. From the beginning, I was uneasy about him. I didn't know him well, but there was something about the way he spoke over people and dismissed opinions that rubbed me the wrong way. Emma, however, was smitten and seemed to overlook any red flags. I tried to keep an open mind because I didn't want to be the sister who judged her partner without understanding him. Over time, my unease turned into concern. Mark's behavior escalated from minor dismissiveness to outright controlling tendencies. He would subtly insult Emma in front of friends, make her doubt her memory, and monopolize conversations. Once at a family dinner, he openly criticized her career choices in a condescending way, and when I tried to intervene politely, he turned the criticism on me, accusing me of always trying to make people feel guilty. Emma laughed it off, saying I was overreacting and that he was just teasing. I started noticing other things too. He would manipulate situations so he always looked right, guilt-trip Emma over small matters, and insist that social gatherings revolve around his preferences. Our family has always been tight-knit, and many relatives commented that Mark seemed charming at first, but became abrasive once he settled into their circle. I voiced my concerns to Emma multiple times, but she would either deflect, say I didn't understand love, or accuse me of being jealous. I even try to have calm conversations where I frame things as observations rather than judgments, but it never worked. She became increasingly defensive, claiming I was trying to control her choices. The wedding planning has been a nightmare for me. Emma wants me to attend every fitting, tasting, and rehearsal, but Mark insists on tagging along and dominating decisions. Last month, during a dress fitting, he criticized the choice of flowers I suggested for centerpieces, telling me my ideas were cheap and out of taste. When I tried to speak up, he raised his voice, and Emma just said, "Stop being dramatic. It's just flowers." The incident left me feeling humiliated and unheard in front of strangers. 2 weeks ago, Emma asked me to attend a bridal shower that Mark was hosting, along with her closest friends and family. I told her I didn't feel comfortable attending because of how Mark behaves around me. She reacted angrily, calling me selfish, accusing me of trying to ruin her special day, and insisting I was overreacting. She said that Mark would be there and I had to learn to coexist if I wanted a relationship with her. I explained that I don't feel safe or respected around him, and that attending events where he's present would only exacerbate the tension. She said that if I refused, I was choosing to be the villain in her story and would regret it forever. I consulted a close friend about the situation, and they agreed that my concerns were valid and that my boundaries were reasonable. They suggested I express my feelings clearly and respectfully without ultimatums. I tried this, writing Emma a long message explaining that I love her and want to support her, but I cannot engage with Mark in any capacity because of his behavior towards me. I emphasize that my refusal is about protecting my mental and emotional well-being, not about sabotaging her wedding. Emma's response was devastating. She accused me of being controlling, said I was hurting the family's dynamics, and claimed that no one else shared my concerns about Mark. She suggested that if I truly loved her, I would put aside personal grievances and attend. Our parents tried to mediate, telling me that attending the wedding is a family duty and that I could avoid direct interactions with Mark. I told them that this was not feasible, as he would be present during most parts of the ceremony and reception, and that pretending everything is fine would only create stress and resentment on my part. My parents are upset, but somewhat sympathetic, though they fear it will cause a rift with Emma. I haven't attended any pre-wedding events since the confrontation. Emma sent me a group chat message yesterday stating that I am choosing Mark over family and that she won't forgive me if I don't attend the wedding. She has since blocked me on social media after I responded that I cannot compromise my boundaries. I haven't spoken to her since, and I'm terrified this may permanently damage our relationship. Friends who know both sides are divided. Some say I'm justified because my boundaries are important and Mark's behavior is toxic. Others argue that I'm overreacting and that my refusal is selfish and will hurt Emma on one of the most important days of her life. I keep thinking about the possibility of attending, pretending everything is okay, and enduring the discomfort, but I also fear that doing so would only enable Mark and make me miserable. I love my sister and want to be there for her, but I also can't ignore the fact that I feel demeaned and unsafe around her fiancé. I feel stuck because every attempt at compromise has failed. I've considered attending only the ceremony and leaving before the reception, but Emma has made it clear that partial attendance is not acceptable. I'm trying to protect my mental health while balancing family loyalty, and I feel like I'm failing on both fronts. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I don't want to interact with her fiancé, despite her insistence that family comes first and I should get over it. Character count, 6,548. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she humiliated me in front of our family. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Anna, 32F. Growing up, we were close at times, but often clashed because our personalities are very different. I'm introverted and cautious, while Anna is outgoing and thrives on attention. Our parents have always favored her, and while they deny it, I've felt the disparity in how we were treated. I've tried to brush it off over the years, focusing on my career and my own life, but it's always been there in the background. Anna got engaged about a year ago, and I was genuinely happy for her. When she asked me to be her maid of honor, I agreed, hoping to make the experience pleasant for both of us. I've always been supportive of her milestones despite our differences, and I thought this could be an opportunity to strengthen our bond. Planning the wedding, however, quickly became a source of stress. Anna is very controlling and insists on every detail being exactly how she envisioned it. I mostly stayed quiet, offering suggestions only when asked, because I didn't want to cause tension. There were moments when she would disregard my feelings or opinions entirely, but I chalked it up to her being stressed about the wedding. The biggest issue arose during the dress fittings. Anna wanted me to wear a specific dress that I absolutely hated. I told her I felt uncomfortable and self-conscious in it, and suggested an alternative that was still elegant and matched the wedding theme. She dismissed my concerns, saying that I didn't understand fashion and that the dress was non-negotiable. I tried to compromise, but she kept pushing. I reluctantly agreed to wear the dress for the sake of peace, even though I felt horrible in it. On the day of the rehearsal dinner, she made a comment in front of our entire family and some of her close friends. She said, "I can't believe my little sister actually thinks she looks good in that. It's brave of her to try, though." It was clearly meant as a joke, but it humiliated me. I froze, and my face went red. Nobody spoke up for me, and Anna laughed as if nothing was wrong. I left the dinner early, feeling deeply hurt and embarrassed. I texted Anna the next day, explaining that I felt humiliated and asking her to apologize. She replied saying she was just joking and that I needed to lighten up because it was all in good fun. I tried to explain why it wasn't funny to me, but she brushed it off, saying I was too sensitive and that I was ruining her wedding mood. As the wedding date approached, I found myself dreading it. I didn't want to be publicly embarrassed again, and I realized that attending would mean putting myself through a lot of anxiety and discomfort just to make her happy. I decided to sit her down a week before the wedding and tell her I wouldn't be attending. I explained my reasons calmly, emphasizing that I loved her, but that I couldn't be part of an event where I felt humiliated and dismissed. Anna's reaction was explosive. She accused me of being selfish, jealous, and trying to ruin her big day. She said that I was overreacting and that everyone else would be disappointed. She even tried to guilt me by saying that Mom and Dad were upset and that my absence would break the family. I stood my ground and told her that my mental health and dignity were more important than attending a wedding that made me feel unsafe and disrespected. Since then, there's been a lot of tension. Our parents have called me multiple times, saying that I'm making things worse and should just swallow my pride for the family. Anna refuses to speak to me except for hostile texts. Some extended family members have taken her side, saying that I should have just ignored the comment and gone anyway. I feel like I'm being punished for setting a boundary. My friends and colleagues have mostly supported my decision, saying that refusing to participate in something that harms my emotional well-being is completely valid. I've had a few friends suggest I try to reconcile after some time has passed, but I'm wary of being humiliated again. I do feel sad about missing what should have been a happy occasion, but I also feel relieved that I didn't put myself in a situation where I would be treated badly. Part of me worries that I'm being overdramatic and that family bonds are supposed to be more forgiving, but the humiliation I experienced at the rehearsal dinner has stayed with me. I don't know if I overreacted or if my sister and family are being unreasonable in expecting me to simply overlook what happened. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she humiliated me in front of the family? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.